What's up, guys? No. What's going on, guys? Today, I'm going to be building a half pipe in my garage. Alright guys, so I actually just lied to you. I'm not exactly building a half pipe here. I've changed my plans a little bit, so let's head inside and I'll show you exactly what I mean. Okay, so here was the plan that I showed a few videos ago with a traditional half pipe here next to the loft. So now that I got the loft done and I've been thinking about it more, I wanted to maybe go away from doing such a traditional half pipe. And my worry is that it might get a little boring just to have a half pipe there. And also I've kind of realized that I won't be able to jump too far out of this and land on the loft because of my ceiling height over the loft. I'll probably be able to get out of it easily, but to try and do like an air trick and fly out onto the loft, the ceiling height just doesn't really allow for it. So with that kind of being taken away, it just leaves with a pretty traditional half pipe. You know, you can air both sides, but to me, I thought that might get a little boring. So instead, I'll show you my new plan, which is this beast. So what I have here on this side is a little bit bigger of a quarter. So before we were at 5 foot, this is now about a 6 foot quarter, and that'll just be a lot better for airing. Then this side is a little bit of a box jump step up type idea. It's really made for fly out tricks, but there is a little bit of a angle here, so it gives you a little bit of a lander. And this takeoff is about 4.5 feet, which I think should be a good height. It'll be steep enough that you can go up and not too far out, because obviously I'm limited on space here. And then I've got kind of a very steep quarter that goes into a little bit of a vert wall, and that's pretty much just there to slow you down, stop you so you can turn back around, and then you can come back and drop into the takeoff and then come back and hit the quarter again. So overall, I think this will be way more fun. I'll still have a nice quarter here to do air tricks, but then what I gain is this nice little step up, and I think this will just in general be a lot more fun and interesting to ride versus having just the traditional half pipe. The other nice thing about this plan is I gain all of this storage space that would have been totally wasted if I had a full half pipe here. So we're going to start off with building this first big quarter pipe, and then we'll just go from there. I'm sure some of the details will change because I know once we get going, we'll probably realize some of the dimensions are going to change a little bit, and we're just going to see how everything looks in the space and go from there. All right, I want to give a quick update on where we're at. We've made a lot of progress on this first big quarter here. We've got it pretty much completely framed. We'll definitely add some more structural bracing in the back before we're done, but we've got kind of the riding surface framed out. We went with 10-inch on center studs here, and we did do a middle rib that goes probably 2/3 of the way up. And I'm glad we decided to do that because this is like almost a 10-foot span. Those 2x4s would be a little bit weak and flexing in the middle without that rib. And down here at the bottom portion is where it's most important because that's when your force from landing will be going right towards the ground. So it's not quite as important when you're up here near vertical. There's not going to be as much force on those, but again, we might add a little bit more bracing to those as well. We also ended up deciding on going with a 9.5 foot wide quarter because we brought it off the wall a foot instead of 6 inches. We found that 6 inches was pretty pointless because with a bike, there's no way you could ride that close to the wall. So we brought it off a foot and went down to a 9.5 foot width quarter so that I still left myself 18 inches here for stairs. But then for the rest of it, we decided to keep the 10-foot width. And so it'll basically just jump out about 6 inches right in this area. And then next we started to build the frame for the lander slash vert wall section here. So I used some post bases similar to my last video, but these are now meant for 4x4 posts. So I've got the posts placed on there. And then so far I just ran this one single 2x6 across the back wall and also tied it into the structure of my building. And then for the sides of this structure, we're using a 2x12 by 12 feet to span this gap. So it's sitting on top of the 4x4 posts that we notched out, just like my loft, basically on a smaller scale. And then what's actually gonna happen in here, we're gonna have 2x6 studs that will span this gap, which is 10 feet. And they will be sitting inside the 2x12. And it'll basically be like a floor structure, but they will have to like start to angle down to get that little bit of a lander. And then when they reach like a low point around here, they'll start to angle back up into the vert wall. So I think we're gonna end up using joist hangers on those 2x6s. This section definitely needs to be really strong because that's where you're gonna be landing on your bike with really concentrated loads. And we did start working on the takeoff. As you can see, we've got the sides pretty much done here. And it's gonna be very similar construction to the quarter pipe. We have the same exact middle rib. It's actually the same radius as the quarter pipe. So we'll get the takeoff completely framed up. And then after that, we're gonna have to figure out how exactly this works out because this is gonna be going up and actually has a little bit of a hump here. And then it starts to go down into the 2x12. So I'm not completely sure how we're gonna do that yet. We'll probably have to get creative with some plywood and see how we stagger the 2x6s through that section. Once we get all of the joists hung on this 2x12, then we can start looking at the vert wall. Another quick update for you guys. So we now have the takeoff completely framed out with studs, and we actually have the landing section. We've still got some more to do. You can see we started adding some bridging here, and I think now we're gonna add bridging through the whole thing to make sure that's really strong and make sure when you land it really distributes the load along all of those 2x6s. So we actually went with 9-inch spacing on these studs to make it a little bit stronger. We have, I think, 10-inch on the takeoff and the quarter. And now we're working on building the vert wall section. So we built 2 separate 5-foot sections so we can lift those up easily and place them at the back wall here. So I just bought more wood. I've got 2 more 2x10s that we're gonna set the vert wall onto, and that'll make it really easy to assemble. And now this dude just showed up, so he's gonna do all of the bridging. Let's get a close up, see what kind of snacks he brought.
Oh man.
Only the healthiest of healthy.
Yep.
All right, cool. Sounds good. All right, let's get back to work. Good.
We going now?
Another quick update, we are pretty much finished with all of the framing. We finished out the lander section here. As you can see, we did the double bridging the whole way. And then we also mounted up the vert wall, and that ended up coming together really nicely. It's tied to the back wall in a bunch of places, and then it's also mounted, like I showed before, on top of a 2x10 there. And then there's also a 2x10 here. So that was a really nice way of doing it. It made it pretty easy to just lift up those 2 5-foot sections and drop them right into place. And as you can see, all of these 2x6s now have joist hangers on them on both sides. There's also 3 long screws coming in from the outside. I could not get a joist hanger on the 2x10s easily. So what I did there was I put some big 3/8 inch lag bolts, 2 in each 2x10 on both sides. So that should be super solid. That would be way stronger than a joist hanger anyway. So it's feeling really good. There's still a little bit of shake in this section, which is like the furthest from the wall. Like if I really try to shake it, I can. But we can probably get rid of that with some X bracing underneath. And also once we put the plywood on, that will kind of square everything up and give it a little bit more rigidity as well. I also started to put some of these brackets on that tie the ramps to the floor. So I drilled the concrete and put in some Tapcon screws. So far I've got 2 on this ramp, 2 here, and then I also put 2 in the back on this one. So you can see in the back corner, there's 1 there, and then there's also 1 there. I think I'm gonna put 2 more on this ramp since it's more or less kind of floating in space. It's gonna be secured to the loft a little bit at the top, but that connection won't be that strong to kind of keep it from moving. So the last thing left to frame will be just this flat bottom section. That'll be really simple because it will be just 2x4s that are laid flat on the ground. And then other than that, we just wanna finish up some more bridging. You can see we're gonna be doing double bridges here at the top. And then we're also on the deck up here. We're gonna do some more bridging. And then once that's done, we'll start laying the 1/2 inch plywood for the riding surface. All right, guys, I wanted to take a quick second to talk about fasteners. So upon further research, I wasn't too happy with some of the screws we were using. We were pretty much just using the regular construction screws, and these are really made more for like decking, and they're really best in tension and not in shear. So in this ramp, we have a lot of shear going on, especially here where the 2x4s connect to the side 3/4 inch plywood. So I went ahead and actually replaced all of these, as you can see, and I replaced these with structural screws. I used this, which is a Simpson strong drive connector screw, and that is made to be used in shear applications like this. So since those are gonna see a lot of force, and I also don't have any other bracketry behind them, I wanted to make sure that was a really nice strong connection and didn't want to start snapping those just regular construction screws. So I went ahead and replaced all of those that go into the side 2x4s. Might sound like a lot, but it really didn't take that long, probably like less than an hour. I also did my best to replace the ones that were going into the ribs as well. And one other note, we were using those same type of screws on the joist hangers for these 2x6s. So I actually went ahead and replaced all of those with nails, because that's really what you're supposed to be using in these floor joist brackets. So I went ahead and got the specified nails that were recommended by the joist hanger manufacturer, which I believe was a 10D by 1.5 inch long nail. Again, it's not ideal to do the job twice, but I'm glad I did that research and made sure that this is gonna be nice and strong, because there's definitely gonna be a lot of force on these joist brackets. And while we're at it, we might as well mention, I also replaced all of the screws that were in my joist hangers on my loft and replaced those with the same type of nails. So I've now got all of the holes filled with the exact specified nails that you're supposed to be using in these. And also I used some longer nails on this side where I have the double header, and that's to tie those two headers together even better than they were before. Now back to the ramp. So far we have 4 sheets of plywood screwed on, and now I think I'm gonna work my way up this ramp. It's kind of tough because this is just bigger than 1 sheet of plywood sideways. So I'm gonna have to split it. And I think I'm gonna go up to this 3rd stud, and so right there I'll be adding some studs so that we can split the plywood there and then add another piece of plywood on top to finish it out. That's basically what we've been doing. We've been pretty much adding studs where we need to. As you can see here, we have a double stud because that's where the plywood meets. And I'm also gonna be working by myself today, at least for the start. So that's gonna be interesting to be able to get the right amount of force applied to the plywood to bend and then also screw it in. So we'll see how it goes. All right, the ramp is complete. I finished putting on all of the riding surface. One of the hardest parts was doing this top curve here for the lander. I ended up starting with a 24-inch section here, and it was really cracking a lot. So then after that, I think I went down to 18 inches for pretty much the rest of them, and that bent a lot easier and there wasn't nearly as much cracking. And then after that, there was a little bit of flat here. So like these pieces were completely flat, and then it starts to curve up into the vert wall. So I think this was like a 3-foot section I cut because that hit a nice double stud that we already had from the 2x10 and 2x4 coming together. So that was pretty easy to bend. And then these were really hard, probably the most difficult on the whole ramp, especially because I was doing it by myself. So I started here with a 3-foot section, which went pretty well, but it was just really hard to hold it with enough force and screw it at the same time. So then after that, I went down to, I think it was like 28-inch sections the rest of the way. That went a little bit better and was a little easier. And yes, I am aware that I pretty much covered my entire window. So thank you in advance for letting me know. And what I actually did was I made this section exactly 3 feet, which is the width of the window. And my plan is to eventually get like a clear piece of polycarbonate and then screw that down in that section so it will still let light in and you'll actually be able to see through that part of the vert wall. And then once I got the riding surface done on this side, I went over and finished the top deck over here. And I decided to go with 3/4 on the deck and then 3/4 on this little mini wall. And behind this wall, I just studded out with some 2x4s. I think I went every 18 inches vertically, and then I tied it up to my loft. And then the 3/4 inch is screwed into the 2x10 of the loft, and then those studs behind, so it really ties everything together pretty nicely. Now there's only one thing left to do, drop in, see how it feels. Okay, first impressions, it's super fun and super tiring. After only like 5 minutes, I'm completely out of breath. The curve on the quarter and the takeoff feel really good. I think we picked the right radius for those. I think they're both 7-foot radius. And the quarter kind of just like throws you perfect that you don't even really have to try to air. You don't have to pull back at all. You can just kind of hit it. And I think the takeoff being 4.5 feet high is just about perfect for the fact that you have to kind of do this little step up, but then you got this nice gradual decline, which is really nice compared to landing flat. And then this vert wall is pretty crazy. It's definitely gonna take some time to learn how to ride it. It's super steep right away. It's, I think, only a 40-inch radius. And we were thinking we were gonna need some more vert on top of that, but you really don't. I think there's only like 6 inches of vert at the top right now, but it's already such a tight radius that you just hit it and it stops you, which is really exactly what we wanted here because we're not dealing with a lot of space. So to have all of this and land with a lot of speed this close to the wall, you need something super steep to stop you and take care of all your momentum so that you can turn back around and keep riding. And it works really well for that, honestly. And I'm so far super pleased with this setup compared to doing just a normal half pipe. I think this is way more fun It's definitely a lot more technical. It's gonna take some time to learn exactly how to ride it correctly. You really have to be in a pretty good cardio shape to be able to ride this for very long. And the riding surface feels pretty good, honestly, for just being the 1/2 inch with all these seams. It's pretty smooth. I think we're probably gonna put some thinner on top, and that'll really smooth out all of the seams that we have. But it's really not bad with a bike. I'm sure on a skateboard you'd think totally different. It would be like really bumpy, but with a bike it's not bad at all. I did actually go through and sand a lot of the seams. You can see they're kind of a different color. So any of the transitions that weren't quite lined up well, I did sand. But yeah, it's pretty much done. There's a lot of details I still wanna like mess with and add. I didn't do any coping up here yet. I think I'm gonna do something plastic or metal just like straight on top here, and also up on the loft so it doesn't get beat up too bad. We decided against doing a traditional coping. I actually bought some tubing for it, but since this is so steep, you don't really need a coping to like pop you off at all. So I just decided to stay with just wood to wood transition. And then the same thing over here, and this feels really good. Nice and smooth when you roll in. I ended up going through with the Sawzall and cutting all that off to match the angle. And next up, I have a lot of wood left. I kind of did that on purpose because I want to build some shelving. As you can see, I have so much space under here, and I think I'm gonna do probably some wraparound shelving, and even under the ramp, there's a lot of space under there. So I can just throw some of this extra stuff I have, like wheels and tires, back here that I'm not gonna need for a while, just like under the ramp, get it out of the way. And the other big corridor, there's plenty of room behind it to add some shelving. I might wanna close it off with some doors just so you don't see all that when you like go to walk in the house. And some other stuff under here. I'm gonna add some more lighting under the loft because obviously it's a little dark now. And I am thinking I'm gonna actually put some walls around my toilet. And also I am gonna do some stairs up right here like I showed in some of my plans. I left 18 inches here on the loft, but I think I'm gonna go with 24-inch stairs. And that's kind of why we did this step here, to leave enough room for the stairs. And so if I go 24, I'll just have to build a little section off the end of the loft there, extend the floor a little bit right here, and then bring it back into the rest of the structure. I also think once we get the final layer of plywood on here, I'm gonna do some type of paint on top to kind of make it look nice and also match the floor of the loft once I paint that. If you have any suggestions on the color I should pick, just let me know. But yeah, this build went pretty smoothly. It was a lot of work. I think I had about 80 hours in this, and I had a friend help me with at least half of that. So a big shout out to Austin for helping me with all of the structure and then also helping me lay those first sheets of plywood. All of that would have been super hard to do by myself because this is so large. So if you total that up, that's probably about 120 hours in this ramp. And if you compare it to the loft, I think I had about 35 to 40 hours in the loft. So that just goes to show you how much more complex building something like this is, with all of these curves and different types of structures, and to really make sure that it's gonna be strong enough to ride and land a bike on it. So that'll be it for today. I'm glad I got now the 2 big projects done here, and now I can just finish up with all the little details to really make them nice. And now I can start working on my car again and also start some new projects that I have in mind.